everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool Transfer Show on Football Tour Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. Looks like we've got some bit of official news today, which we'll, of course, we'll discuss, and you can probably see on the screen as well. But there's also been some mixed sort of information from different sources that are suggesting that another deal might not occur now, and it may be something that goes through the line next summer, which we'll talk about today as well. So let's start with the first one, and that is Giovanni Leoni. Now, before I even speak anything about it, let me present the tweet. So this is what Fabrizio Romano tweeted earlier on today. So Giovanni Leoni to Liverpool. Here we go. Deal agreed with Parma for Italian 18-year-old centre back. No loan, never discussed, which for me is music to my ears because I didn't think that should have been an option, and thankfully it's not. Leoni joins Liverpool now as part of Arne Slot's plans. Fee around 35 million with sell-on clause. So 35 would be roughly 30 million pounds. From what I've heard, it's actually 26 plus add-ons that equal to about 30 million. But nonetheless, it's around that sort of region. No convincing ever needed as Leone wanted Liverpool. So this is a great bit of news because a couple of days ago, I think a lot of fans were worried that Liverpool weren't addressing the centre back positions and that we were going to go into the season with less numbers in that area. But I said it so many times that that is not going to be the case. Liverpool have always had the idea of signing at least one centre back in this window. You could potentially have two centre backs, which we'll talk about later in the show. But overall, I'm very, very pleased with this rumor. Should I say more or less official news? Of course, Liverpool haven't made it official yet, but it's only a matter of time. Looks like Liverpool have signed a Maldini regen, according to some. But no, overall, great bit of business from the club. And for me, it's an interesting one in terms of the profile. We were always after a young centre back to join the squad. He's 18 years of age, so currently he does not need to be registered as a squad player. And hopefully, he stays there for years and years. So in the next few years, once he turns 21, he'll be regarded as a homegrown player because he's been at the club uh, for at least 3 years, and that is the minimum requirement before they turn 21. So that's a plus point there already. And I also read something earlier on today, which I'll present on the screen, that his idol, which is no surprise, is Virgil van Dijk. So his passion is the English Championship. He wants to play there one day. He loves Van Dijk and wants to become like him. And he's also admitted saying that he's inspired by Van Dijk. So looks like the young defender will get his dream to play alongside Van Dijk and more importantly, learn from him whilst he's at Liverpool. So this is a great bit of business from Liverpool. And in terms of the profile of the player, I can see why Liverpool have targeted Leone. He's certainly someone that fits the bill. 6'4", I think he is, and he's only 18 years of age, so he's still got, lots of room to grow, I guess. Um, in terms of the way he plays, he's very aggressive in terms of his tackling, in terms of the manner of, how he defends. So one of his strong points is his leap, where he's very, very complete in terms of aerial duels. He's not shy of being involved in one-on-one duels. He seems to enjoy the challenge of a physical battle, and I've seen pictures, and I'm sure everyone else has, in regards to him dragging Lukaku to the ground. I've seen clips of him manhandling Vlahovic, who's a very imposing striker in Serie A. So for me, this is a young defender that looks like could be a very, very special talent. And I think this season he will have the opportunity to play in the team. He's not just because on paper, he might be regarded as third or fourth choice, doesn't mean that, he's barely going to get any game time. I think he will get plenty of game time next season. So I'm excited in terms of the prospect of watching Leone playing for Liverpool. The deal ticks all the boxes from a financial point of view. And Richard Hughes has done it again. I'm not sure everyone knows in terms of his history. Of course, he's been raised in Italy, so he's very fluent in Italian. So that's come to great use, and I think he's pretty much presented the project to say, look, generally young Italian defenders don't come to Premier League at this stage of their careers. but this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I'm very pleased that Leone has decided to come. Apparently, it feels like it didn't need much convincing, maybe due to the pull of having Van Dijk at the club, and that would have been the project that was presented to him. That you're going to come over here, you're going to play alongside Van Dijk, you're going to learn from him. He's going to be your mentor, and that's going to put you in a great position to become his successor in years to come. So I think when you're given that kind of responsibility, even being 18 years of age, it shows how much the club value him, and how much the club see him as part of their long-term future, but also they have a vision for him to be, you know, possibly the leader of this team in years to come. So in terms of the project, it must have been a very appealing one for him. Probably something where he didn't really much need much, sort of convincing to join the club. So I'm very, very pleased about this move, and yeah, I'm really excited to see how he performs in a Liverpool shirt. And looks like Liverpool got their man in the end. This was the young profile that we were after. We were previously linked to Dean Howson, but of course he decided to move to Real Madrid. But just because we missed out on one target doesn't mean things don't move. And it looks like Liverpool have finally found their gem. Before we move on, there was one thing that made me chuckle as I was going through tweets online today, and it's the fact that um, Newcastle tried to launch a last-minute effort to sign Giovanni Leoni. The player was scheduled for a Zoom meeting with Eddie Howe, but failed to show up. Now, all I have to say to Newcastle is behave yourselves. They need to focus on signing strikers. You know, let let other teams like Liverpool, find their centre backs, and let us, sign those high profile players or those hidden gems. Focus on getting yourself a couple of strikers because that's your priority now. So, why don't you just focus on that rather than trying to get involved in our business again? Because history should tell you, that doesn't work out. And in recent events, they've been you know, they've been misled and they've not been able to complete certain deals, i.e., Hugo Katike. So, let's say the bet for them. But hopefully, from a Liverpool point of view, we've got one centre back in, and hopefully, we can sign another one. Before we move on, just going to read some of the comments. Ozan, come back, big up yourself, Ozan. He says, Ozzy, it is just the history of the Tottenham. To be fair, I missed the game, but I have, kept in the loop in terms of what happened. Being 2-0 up and then drawing and then losing on penalties just seems very Spurs. It doesn't matter who the manager is. I don't mean to be, but it looks like it's their DNA to just bottle these, huge and pressured situations. So yeah, very Spursy in terms of what happened there. I'll have to check the highlights, but yeah, disappointing for Spurs fans, but not a huge surprise from a neutral point of view. Mazzy, big up Mazzy. He says, Ozzy, how are you feeling tonight? Are you happy with Giovanni Leoni and what role would he play this season? I'm very pleased about the signing of Giovanni Leoni. We were linked to him about 2, 3 weeks ago. So as you do, once there's a name linked to Liverpool, you automatically go through, the YouTube compilations and see what that player is about. I watched a few and I was very highly convinced. I thought if Liverpool's serious, then this is a great profile for us to look into because we do need a centre back that is regarded as the future of the club. And with Howson, no longer a target or due to him moving over to Real Madrid, Liverpool had to find another gem, and I feel like we've found one there in Giovanni Leoni, and I think he is going to get a lot of game time this season. Even if the game deal doesn't happen, which we'll speak about very shortly, I think he's going to be heavily involved. And look, he's going to be learning from Van Dijk, which is definitely the guy that he inspires to be and idolizes. But he's also got the likes of Ibrahima Konate in the squad. He's got Marc Guehi. Hopefully, he'll be joining Liverpool. And then you've got experienced players like Joe Gomez in the ranks. So it's a great squad for him to be a part of. I think he'll learn a lot from these defenders. And I think he'll only bode well for his future in the game. So I'm very excited and looking forward to seeing him in a Liverpool shirt. Mazzy says, Ozzy, what's happening with Marc Guehi? We are getting mixed messages. Paul Joyce, the most certified journalist for Liverpool, says the deal is on, but Sky Sports are saying he might stay at Crystal Palace. We're going to talk about that very, very shortly. But yes, it is mixed signals at the minute. Maddie says yes, both Newcastle and Man United tried last minute inquiry about Leoni, confirmed by Joyce, but he only wanted Liverpool. Yeah, no shame from either of those clubs trying to hijack our deals. Um, it never ends up happening for them, so they should, probably learn from their previous encounters. Arne Slot says there were reports that Guehi is staying Aussie due to the big gap in valuation of Palace. So let's talk about that right now. So we are getting mixed opinions, unfortunately, in regards to Marc Guehi. So the tweet that I saw earlier today, I'll bring it up on the screen and we can discuss it together. So this is what I saw. So talks between Liverpool and Crystal Palace for Marc Guehi are ongoing, with Crystal Palace aware that the player wants to join the Premier League champions. That was reported by Paul Joyce, which Mazzy mentioned in the comments as well. And Sky Sports had a conflicting information where they've said that it is looking likely at the moment that Mark Gay will stay at Crystal Palace and leave on a free transfer next summer. And apparently, Liverpool have held talks about signing Gay, but at the moment there is a gap in valuation. So, thoughts on this rumor, or should I say speculation? Should we be concerned? Me personally, maybe I just have a different mind frame. I'm not too concerned. I just feel like it's a strange one because yesterday it just felt like it was on the verge of being completed. Uh, Actually, come to think of it, yesterday it felt like the game move was in advanced talks and Leone was just negotiations, but now it's kind of flipped over. So it's a strange one. Um, I still think we'll all get Gay. I don't know what it is. I just still have that gut feeling we'll sign him. I think Palace are trying to do their best to get a better deal, because the rumor was that it will be around 30 odd million pounds, which is quite low, if I'm being honest with you. I was quite surprised to hearing that as the possible fee to get that deal finalized. Maybe they're trying to get 35 and or close to 40 or as much as possible from their side. I think we'll get there in the end. I just feel like I feel like they're trying to just get as much money as possible because the the chairman, Simon Parish, he's been quite vocal in the last few days, suggesting that it wouldn't even make sense for them to let him leave on a free. And if there is business that can be done in this window, I think they'll be more than happy to conclude a deal. And it's quite clear that Liverpool are the team that he favors. That's the team he wants to join. So I feel like it's only a matter of time something happens. I know it's probably a bit of a weird feeling today because yesterday it felt like it's on the verge of being done, and today we're getting conflicting reports. So that's the nature of the beast. That's how transfer rumors happen or occur. So we just have to sit tight until we get official news tomorrow. As I mentioned a couple of days ago, it only takes one bomber for us to change our mood or change our way of thinking about certain deals. All I know is that Liverpool are still trying to get the deal done. They're still in continuous talks with Crystal Palace. So that shows me that they aren't walking away, and they're still trying their best to get him into the squad, and it will be a four-man centre back positions in terms of Van Dijk, Konate, Guehi, Leone, and maybe add Joe Gomez because he is fully fit. I saw some pictures circulating where he's doing some light training, so he's back. So that's great news because I wasn't aware in terms of the magnitude of his injury. When they mentioned Achilles, you're always thinking that could be a long-term injury there, or medium to long term. So thank God, he's fitting well, and hopefully, he's able to stay fit and can contribute to the team's success this season. But let's just paint the scenario. Let's just think of this situation where, let's say we don't get Mongay in this window, which I don't think, by the way, just for the record, I think we'll get him. But let's say we don't. Everyone in the chat, would you be happy with the options of having Van Dijk, Konate, Gomez, and Leone as your four centre back options, with Endo possibly being a makeshift centre back as fifth choice? Um, I would be content with it. I wouldn't be pleased or happy about it because I feel like that's not enough for us to feel confident going into next season. And I'm not doubting any of the players in terms of quality. Van Dijk, Konate, formidable partnership in terms of the centre back pairing there. Joe Gomez, of course, a very experienced option, but his concern is more of an availability issue more than anything else. Leone, as promising as he is, I don't want it to be where we put too much pressure on the young player, even though I think he could handle it. If he was thrown in that scenario, and Endo, being that makeshift centre back makes sense. Whenever he's played, he's looked pretty solid in that position. Now I'm going to make a suggestion that may be a bit off track in terms of what I've said in the last few weeks, but I'm trying to paint the best scenario here for the club. If for some reason Marc Guehi is not a Liverpool player by the end of the window, and we get this kind of news in the next few days, maybe it's worth Liverpool pursuing a defensive midfielder now rather than next year. So kind of flip the script a little bit where I think the plan was to get Guehi now and then get a defensive midfielder next summer. But with it being a possibility that we'll get Guehi next year, why not reverse it and get that defensive midfielder now? And the reason I'm saying that is because I would rather Endo be a permanent centre back option as fourth or fifth choice, depending on Gomez's availability, and that would give me more assurance going into the season. So Palace fans won't like this, but let's just give it an example. So let's say our centre back options are Van Dijk, Konate, Gomez, Leone, and Endo. So that's five centre backs there. But we get someone like Adam Wharton, and with Adam Wharton, you add him into the midfield. So then your options are Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Wharton, Curtis Jones as your five midfield options, plus your Bajtic and your McConnells and Trey Neoni. I think Bajtic and McConnell might, get a move away from the club eventually, but that's five solid, first team options there. For me, that would be the better option to do now if we're not able to get Marc Guehi. And I also feel like that solidifies our midfield and defense, in my opinion, because Endo being labeled as your fifth choice um, centre back option, but then you've got an extra body in midfield. We're not, making him play in two different roles. He can solely focus on being a centre back. So for me, that would be the right move to go if we can't get Mark Gay this summer. But then I would also have a slight concern in that theory because if we are regarding as Gay for the future in terms of being a summer signing of 2026, what does that mean for Konate? Does that mean he's leaving? Because that would indicate in my eyes, because it's like one player goes out on a free and then we sign another one on a free. So a lot of scenarios in my head right now. Let's just see what happens in terms of any development. I feel like we will sign Mark Gay eventually, but if not, maybe fast track that midfield signing now and I get Mark Gay next year on a free, which I wouldn't be too displeased, but I think I'd be satisfied with that. But feel free to let me know in the chat. Am I just going a bit overboard in terms of having different theories? Um, but who knows? I feel like Liverpool will need to explore these options in order to make sure that they have a complete squad because we're doing so well with our recruitment. I don't want it to be where we end the window and we're like one or two positions short. I want it to be where we've got all the players or all the numbers available and we can really go for all of the titles this season. That would be the dream scenario for me. So let's see, what happens going forward. I'm just going to go through some of the comments before we move on. Let's see. Let's start here. So, Ozan Kawhi said, "Yeah, bro, I don't know what to believe at this stage. We'll just have to wait and see because we've got two conflicting, sets of information. Last year, I feel sorry, yesterday, I feel like everyone was pretty much reporting that Gay's on the verge of signing. Then all of a sudden, it's like, no. I feel like the Sky Sports. Honestly, I feel like Simon Parrish has just called Sky Sports and said, look, make it seem like that. You know, the deal isn't anywhere near completion. just so we can kind of bump up the price a little bit because Liverpool will probably have that, information presented to them and say, look, this is what's been reported on Sky Sports, like what's going on. So I think they're trying to play mind games here. Maybe because the fee isn't very high, if I'm being honest with you. But 35 million for a defender on his last year of contract makes sense. Look at Donnarumma. He's got 1 year left on his contract. He's going for 26. So I know different players, different positions, but Donnarumma is a world-class player in his own right. So 35 for a centre back like Marc Guehi for me is a good deal. But let's see what happens. I think we just have to wait a few days, see how this marinates, and hopefully um, we'll get some clarification. If he does stay, I'll be very surprised. Just on based on what the chairman has said in the last few days, where I don't think having Gay leaving on the free is an option. That's the way he communicated. So if that's the case, I'd be very surprised. I'm expecting Mark Gay to join this summer. I really do. Dad said, "Bill Ozzy will he only be on the bench on Friday? Do you think?" I've also read today that Liverpool trying to get the deal wrapped up tonight, so he comes over for medical. So if he comes over for the medical on Thursday, nah, it's too soon. It's too soon. The match is literally the next day. He wouldn't have been trained if that's the case. So no, I highly doubt it. Even if he flies in tonight, tomorrow will be his medical day, and from there onwards, it's match day. So I don't think it would be the right option. If it was on Sunday, our fixture, then maybe he would, but I don't think there's any rush to do that, in my opinion. So no, let him, complete his move. Let him, you know, come to Liverpool, sort out his accommodation, all that sort of thing, and then from next week onwards, he can start training with the full team, and then he'll be available for selection. So yeah, should be an exciting prospect. Looking forward to seeing him join the club very soon. So yeah, excited about the new signing coming through. AR says, "Big up Aussie and chat. How are you? Like, comment, share, and subscribe. You never walk alone. Big up AR. I hope you're doing well. Um, Other questions, I don't care. Just bring me Isak and Leoni. I'm happy, Aussie. Would you be pleased? Or no, I don't think you'll be pleased. But if we don't get Mark Gay, would you be content with that? I want all three. I want Isak, Leoni, and Gay. And as surprised as it might be, I'll be content if we don't get the winger. I feel like we should, but if we don't get it, it's not the worst case scenario because we've got a young player like Rio coming through the ranks. I think the centre back position has to be addressed. And if not, maybe bring my theory into it where Endo becomes a permanent centre back choice and then we've add another defensive midfielder to our squad. That would be the alternative if we can't get Mark Gay through the door in this window. So let's see what happens. Different options, but hopefully we can get to some sort of conclusion in the coming days. Yeah, I personally think Giovanni Leoni will be watching in the stand, then on the bench. I agree. If he's flying in today or tomorrow and it does his medical, he'll be, presented or made official as a new Liverpool player, and I expect him to be in the stands as well. So yeah, there's very little chance that he'll be available for selection. He wouldn't have even trained, so it wouldn't make any sense for that to happen. Uh, all I can say, big up to Daz. Big up to everyone in the chat. Raji Painting, big up yourself. He says, "What's the latest news on Isak? Any new developments with Gay? He only wants Liverpool, but Palace are asking for more money." We'll speak about Isak later in the show. In terms of Gay, that's what it seems like. I think Palace want more money, and that's why it's been communicated to Sky Sports. All the other journalists surrounding this rumor haven't presented that news. It only came from Sky Sports, from what I know. So I don't think there's any issue with this deal. I think it'll just be a matter of time that Liverpool come to an agreement with Palace. Maybe because the fees seem to be around 30 million, and Palace want to try and get at least a minimum of 35. I think that's the stumbling block right now. So we'll see what happens. I'm very confident it will happen. I'm very sure it will. We'll just probably have to wait a few more days for that to occur. AR says Mark Gay was two options: buy him now for 35 to 40 million, or get him on a free end of this season. I'd rather get him now, honestly, because we're not blessed in terms of numbers or quality in our squad when it comes to the defense. So why not get him now? It makes the perfect sense. He will get game time. So if he's concerned about his chances of being selected for the England squad, he will play plenty of games, in my opinion. And I feel like I'd rather have him now where there's still uncertainty regarding Konate. So if Konate ends up, leaving the club at the end of the season, on paper, Marc Guehi ends up being the automatic replacement that moves up to play alongside Van Dijk, or Leoni might overtake him. So at least with that, you've got the options of Guehi or Leoni, taking Konate's place, and then we end up signing another defender. But it would be a defender that doesn't need to be under huge pressure because with Konate leaving, we already have three established centre backs in the squad already. So if Gay joined the next year, then I would have uncertainty in terms of Konate's situation even more. So I would rather spend the money now. Of course, it's not my money, so it's only so much I can say. But I think we need centre backs in this squad. We're lacking numbers. So for me, it has to be done this summer rather than wait until next summer. Delulu Steve said free Isak, of course. Appreciate your comment there. AR says Isak's situation is dragging too long. Newcastle are playing hardball. They are. We'll give them a bit of space because they've, managed to sign a couple of players. I saw a couple of tweets saying this is from Newcastle fans that they were questioning rival fans or neutral fans that apparently Newcastle had no pull, but all of a sudden they've signed Malik Fial and Jacob Ramsey. I've actually heard that they've been trying to get Malik Fial for about a year, so they've tapped up a player behind the scenes and possibly unsettled him at his current club. Look, so the irony. You're quick to cuss Isak, but you've probably done the same sort of methods to get another player through the door. So football fans, honestly, we can be hypocrites, especially when it comes to our own clubs. Uh, so yeah, you just have to be honest sometimes in terms of say what's right and what's wrong. Um, but yeah, I think once they've got those two deals finalized and made official, then hopefully we'll get some sort of development with the Isak deal. I'm predicting we'll get some news on Friday. So on the 15th, that's my prediction. I think that's the day we'll get some sort of news, whether that's an official approach from Liverpool or something of that magnitude. I'm expecting some further developments with that saga. So hopefully, you know, that could happen. AR says central defensive midfield is needed. It is, but I think it's not priority because they would want to focus on getting two centre backs in now. I think, um, but if it's only one, then I'd rather get another midfielder and then have Endo as a centre back. If that makes sense. But that's just the theory I have in my mind right now. Manny says, Aussie, we need Isak and Guehi to complete our transfer business and stay ahead of Arsenal, Man City. Otherwise, this season, anything can happen, bro. Yeah, I agree. I think Isak and Guehi completes the near perfect transfer window, in my opinion, and it gives us pretty much a complete squad. Of course, you can never have a perfect squad, but I think it's complete in terms of numbers and quality and depth. So I'm waiting for those two signings to happen right now. Leon is through, so that's a bonus. But if you can add Marc Guehi and Alexander Isak, yeah, 10 out of 10 window, in my opinion. AR said we need squad depth and reinforcements. Our bench look weak and no impact players on bench. Currently, yes, you're probably right, but I think we're trying to do the groundwork to add players to the squad, and then once we have those three additions, hopefully Mark Gay, and Leone, and Isak, then you'll see the strength and depth in our squad. Right now, we've got gaps. So that's why it doesn't look like it's full of quality. We had to play two, three young players on the bench the other day against Crystal Palace. So um, that's why it might come across that it's not a full squad right now. But just gotta be patient. Well, once we get those players through the door, you'll see how strong of a squad Liverpool have going into next season. AR says we need to kill games off and be ruthless and goal. Uh, we like keeping games tight. Well, Isak will be the difference maker in that. I'm very much sure of that. AR says media playing games with football fans, media playing mind games. Yeah, could definitely be the case regarding the gay deal, in my opinion. Uh, Finners Matty says any news on Isak? Not any real developments, if I'm being honest with you, but we'll speak about it later in the show. Uh, Delirious Steve says, don't tell me you still want Barcola. I haven't watched him today, so let me know how he performed against Tottenham. But yes, I still want Barcola. That's my guy right there. So yeah, I still want him. Raji Penty says last season we had Salah, Gakpo, Diaz, Chiesa, Jota, Nunes, 630 attackers. Now we are left with Salah, Gakpo, Chiesa, Ekitike. We need one or two top-notch attackers to cook. I think we'll have five. So it'll be Gakpo, Chiesa, Ekitike, Isak, Salah, and I think Rio will be the sixth choice. That's my prediction going into next season. Ideally, I'd want one more and then Rio, so it ends up being seven. But I think that will be the options that we present with at the start of. I can't even say start of the season. I think it'll be the start of September because once the windows close, we'll have complete visibility of who is in our squad, and I think that's how it will appear in the end. Um, Phyllis Matty says, "Who do you think Liverpool's vice captain will be?" Interesting. Van Dijk, of course, our current captain. I'd probably say Salah. I think Salah because of his experience and being not the main guy, but because he's our talisman, I think he will probably get that role. I wouldn't mind someone like McAllister. But I think because Salah pretty much starts every game, I would go for the Egyptian King. So that would be my choice. He was already, I think, third or fourth in line behind, number 66. So no, I think it'll be Mohamed Salah. I can see that Steve has also said Mo Salah. I think it'll be Mohamed Salah, to be honest. Other Kamal says, by the way, I just clocked that with Dembele winning the Super Cup tonight, Mo Salah has zero chance for the Ballon d'Or. Yeah, I think so, unfortunately. Yeah, it's always going to be a bit of a stretch for Salah. And as silly as it sounds, with the Ballon d'Or, I feel like you have to win the Champions League more so than your own domestic league. They look at the Champions League with more value in comparison to your other league. If you win domestic competitions, then it adds a bit more weight. But I feel like they always pick the winner that comes from the Champions League, in my opinion. But yeah, it's a shame. Doesn't get the plaudits he deserves. But as Liverpool fans, we know what he brings to the table. We know how great he is. I'm sure he's probably come to those terms that realizing that maybe that Ballon d'Or accomplishment won't happen. But it's just it's honestly, I don't mean to just say it out loud, but I do feel like there's politics involved. With him being a Muslim and being an African player, I don't think that bodes well with the agenda or the narrative at FIFA because it always has to be a certain profile for them. So yeah, it's just one of those things. I do feel like he gets disrespected and disregarded very easily. And I'm not just saying it because I'm a Liverpool fan and he's our guy. Salah hasn't even been part of certain nominations for Ballon d'Or when he's had great seasons over the years. Like he's always been the player that's got minimum 20 for a right winger, but doesn't even get included in the top 20. So make that what you will. There's definitely an agenda there, but I think for him, it's more about building his legacy, making sure he gets, helps his team, which is of course Liverpool right now, helps his nation, which is Egypt. So he'll be playing for Egypt in the AFCON in a few months' time as well. So I think that's his sort of thought process right now. Help his current teams, and if that's going to happen, it'll happen. But if not, I don't think he's going to lose any sleep regarding individual accolades when it comes to the Ballon d'Or. Uh, Mike says, Ozzy, do you think our team right now is fully ready to win the match against Bournemouth comfortably at Anfield on Friday evening? I think we have enough quality to win that game. Yes, 100%. Of course, in terms of the squad depth, we don't, but I think we'll have enough options on the bench to get the win on Friday. So, yeah, I'm very, very confident that we will. Uh, Delusi says, Barcola played like prime Lazar Markovic. Bro, just stop it. Oh, that's a terrible comparison there. I haven't seen the game, so I can't really say. But yeah, if that's the case, then yeah, maybe we'll hold off to see how he does next year. But no, that's a terrible comparison. Um, other comments he also recently spoke out against UEFA. Yes, in terms of the unfortunate tragic death of a Palestinian striker. Um, so yeah, but I feel like Salah is one of those guys where he's very smart. He knows the game. He knows how it is. So he knows probably deep down it's not going to happen for him. But I feel like he needs to be the voice for different people, but he needs to just do what feels best for him. So if he needs to speak out loud for certain situations in the world, use your platform to do that. I think that this is the best time to do that going forward. Because right now, you know, UEFA, FIFA, all these organizations, they don't respect him in that manner. So, yeah, build a legacy for yourself. You know, look out for your own people in terms of Egypt, your community, and the Arab world, and just do things the right way. Because I feel like he's been such a role model to so many over the world that that's the way he needs to do it, in my opinion. So yeah, focus on the football, but just continue to build your legacy because you are a special player in my eyes. So yeah, hopefully Salah has that in his mind frame, and he's focused on Liverpool, he's focused on Egypt, and that's all he cares about. So and of course beating records because he's been breaking records left, right, and center. Uh, Stewart says Rodrigo over Barcola, not for me, and it looks like Rodrigo is moving over to Man City. That's the rumor right now. Dennis is saying, Stewart is here, popcorn. Stewart said, "Were you looking for me, sir?" I was like, "Is that Ozzy was yesterday?" I mentioned your name, Stewart, because you were very negative a couple of days ago, thinking that Liverpool weren't going to sign any player whatsoever. Leoni has been agreed today, so that's one deal going through. Guehi, I think will go through. It's strong speculation that that will happen, and we'll probably get some sort of development with Isak as well. So yeah, we mentioned yesterday because you were very vocal a couple of days ago, thinking that Liverpool weren't going to do any business, and the vibe that I got from you was that the window had closed all of a sudden. So as I said on that show, please be patient. We will eventually get our players in the end. But yeah, we'll wait and see. But yeah, bring up yourself. Thank you for your comments and thank you for tuning in. Now let's move on to the next rumor. And we slightly touched on it in terms of centre backs, and that is regarding Konate. So the sort of latest whispers, it's not any heavy news, but I thought I'd still speak about it today. Um, Liverpool will offer Ibrahima Konate a new contract in the next few days. If it is rejected, they will likely list the defender for sale this summer. Now, let me know in the chat what your thoughts are. If we do actually offer him a contract and he rejects it straight away, should we sell him or should we keep him on for one more season? Now, I'm definitely conflicted with this because my initial reaction would be sell him because if he's not willing to, commit to the club and he's not willing to play for the cause in terms of giving his all for Liverpool next season, then I don't want him at the club. But I've probably changed the tune. I'd keep him on if I'm being brutally honest with you, just because I'm looking at our squad right now. We're very thin when it comes to centre backs. Of course, Leone's coming through, and I'm really hoping, God willing, that Guehi also joins Liverpool as well. But then if you sell Konate, then you have to sign another defender to come through. And for a club to sign three centre backs and think that they can go on and challenge for titles in the coming season, for me, it's unheard of. It doesn't really happen in that way. So for me, I don't think that's a good way to conduct business. I would rather keep Konate for another year. Try and convince him to stay. If he wants to leave, look, so be it. Because in my eyes, I'm going to see it as Marc Guehi's in the club right now. Leone could be the next big thing. Like, what if he ends up being an absolute monster and looks even better than Konate in the team? Can't rule it out because he's that kind of level of player. He's very highly regarded. And what if him and Van Dijk form a great partnership? Or we just have to sign one more defender next year where, let's say it's Van Dijk, Guehi, Leone. You technically have to sign a fourth choice centre back. It doesn't need to be someone that's better than the other two or other three, if you include Leone as well. So honestly, I don't want it to be where we're chopping and changing too much of our squad. And with a department that's already thin, I don't want us to sell another defender. I don't think that makes any logical sense. And I feel like we have to put emotions to one side when it comes to making business decisions. So from a footballing point of view, it doesn't make sense to do that. From a business sense, we're not going to get a lot of money for Konate. The max we'd get is about 40 mil, I think, in my opinion. So who will we able to sign for 40 mil just like that? Yes, Marc Guehi rings that bell, but Marc Guehi deal doesn't rely on Konate being sold, if that makes sense. So for me, I would rather keep Konate. If it ends up, if he ends up where he leaves on the free next year, it is what it is. But I would like him to be in the squad now and really help us, win as much silverware as possible. As many titles in the season. That's the way I'm looking at it. So let me know in the chat, what you guys think. I also saw some news that Real Madrid will leave a free slot in the first team in case of a signing in the last few days. That's why I think this rumor has sprung up again because some people are suggesting it could be for Konate. They have signed a young Argentinian midfielder called Franco Mastantuano, who we were actually linked to a few months ago as well. Looks a great player. If you haven't seen him in action, yeah, go over to YouTube, watch a few compilations because looks like a very, very special talent. He is going to be registered with the Castilla, so that's the B team for Real Madrid temporarily. I think due to his age, he can be listed as a youth player if that makes sense. So they can still sign another senior player. So could that be Ibrahima Konate? I'm not too sure. But they're leaving that as a free slot in case he becomes available. So I don't think Liverpool should sell Konate. I think we should keep him on board for another season. And whatever happens next year, this time next year will be. But let me know in the chat what you guys think in regards to Konate. Uh, let's move on to the next rumor. And Alexander Isak. Now, the latest in regards to the Swedish striker, not much today, if I'm being honest with you. He's pretty much still training alone at Newcastle United as his teammates prepare for their opening game against Aston Villa. Malik Fial was presented to the world. He was actually in training today, and I watched the video that was on their social media, and there's no signs of Isak there. So they pretty much, left him out in the cold, and it looks like that's the current stance and that's the current situation with Isak and Newcastle. So the big question is, will Liverpool make an official bid this week? I believe they will. I just have that faith that they will. I think it's only a matter of time that we just, put that briefcase down with that money and say, look, we want to sign the player. Here's 80 mil on top. You'll get the rest in installments. And then let's talk business and let's save Isak from this situation and get him to Liverpool. That's the way I'm forecasting. And I'm hoping it happens in the next few days because there's no going back. Isak's, burnt the bridges in terms of his relationship with the club and the fan base. The fans made it very clear they're annoyed with him. They were burning shirts yesterday all over the city. So he was even warned to not even be in Newcastle yesterday. So right now, hopefully, he's in a safe space and he's not, anywhere near Newcastle and he's hopefully trying to find himself a new house at Liverpool. But I think, we'll get some developments in the coming days. Um, but yeah, only time will tell. I think by next week, we'll know the clear picture into what's happening with Isak. I highly doubt he stays at Newcastle and I expect him to be a Liverpool player. So yeah, let me know in the chat what you guys think. Do you think he's going to come or not? Let me know what you think. That's the last rumor. I'm just gonna go through some of the comments before we close the show. Um, Ozen Kabak says, Ozzy, I don't want to change it, but we all know if you speak up, you get shut down. That's all I'm going to say. Fair enough. Um, Stuart says, I still feel down until we sign Isak, no party. Okay. So you're still in the assumption that we're not going to get Isak. That's your feeling right now. That's fine. Can you let me know why you feel we're not going to get Isak? Like in terms of what's happened, I don't think he can stay at Newcastle. And there's no other club that will sign him now either. So it's Liverpool or nothing right now in my eyes. So we'll see in due course. Stuart says Liverpool are making the right move. Konate, we don't want another Trent repeat. Uh, so you're saying in terms of us offering him a new contract? Yeah, I agree with that. But you would sell Konate. Look, a few weeks ago, if you asked me that question, I probably said yes because I feel like there's a time and place for that kind of move to happen. But now we've only got 3 weeks left. I feel that's too much work, and I feel that's too much of a change within the squad to sign three new centre backs alongside Van Dijk. I don't think it's worth it. I'd rather have a bit of stability in our squad. So I would rather keep Konate for another season. And yes, it could be the whole Trent outcome in terms of um, him leaving on a free next time. But um, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Delete Stu says Isak is coming. I believe so as well. Mastan Tuano is a tennis player, bro. No, he's an Argentine attacker. You gotta do your research. He's definitely. I literally spoke about him a few months ago. So he's a player we were linked to. He's supposed to be like the next wonder kid from Argentina. So yeah, he's definitely he's definitely a player. Trust me. Um, Delicious said, let's do it. Call in for 5 minutes, bro. I'm gonna have to go now. I've got a few things to do, but I have promised that end of the window, we'll have a chat. So if Stuart, if you want to join and speak about the window, because I feel like right now it's just developments. And with the Isak one, if you're still feeling down about it, I kind of understand because we've not heard anything for the last 48 hours. So if that's his feeling, of course he's entitled to feel like that. I still have the positivity to feel like we're going to get the play in the end. So yeah, if he doesn't get Isak, then it is what it is. But we'll see. Right now, it's just we have to sit back, relax, and wait until what happens. I feel like we'll get Isak in the end. I feel like we'll get Marc Guehi, and looks like Leoni's coming through the door, which for me is great news. So we've got some official news on one defender coming in. Hopefully, we'll get some further news tomorrow. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Ozan Kabak. Thank you to Mazzy. Thank you to Daz. Thank you to AR. Thank you to Roger Painting. Thank you to Lulu Steve. And thank you to Finners. And thank you also to Stewart's. Appreciate your engagement as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming shows, I will be doing another show tomorrow. We'll be doing the match preview of Liverpool versus Bournemouth, and I'll be joined by a special guest as well. The guest is Double D, who's, if you've watched the channel before, he's been on the show quite a few times in the past. So yeah, a good friend of mine. We'll be doing the match preview tomorrow, and then yes, Friday we'll be doing a live watch along of that game as well. So lots to look forward to. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you know what time we go live. Before we close the show, there's one more question from Ozan Kawak. He says, "How do you get your hair so absolutely perfect?" And Arteta like, honestly, it's genes. My family's blessed with very thick jet black hair, so yeah, it probably comes from my father and my mom's side. So yeah, it's all genetics. Nothing, no re-enhancements. No trips to Turkey or anything to that nature. All natural. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I've been blessed in that regard. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.